Hello everyone, welcome to Mental Health TV. I'm really excited tonight. We've got students with us from a big range of backgrounds after it was asked for us last week to include some student perspective. And so we have some of the finest young minds available. Can I introduce you first to Vanessa?
Hello everyone, it's great to be here again. I'm Vanessa Garrity, I'm co-presenting with Nicky. I'll be doing the social media tonight, so if I'm looking down, it's not that I'm not listening, but I'll be checking out any tweets that are coming in on MHTV, so do tweet us and join the discussion that way. Alternatively, if you on Facebook, if you go onto the Unite MHNA page and like the page, you can follow our live stream there.
Okay, I'm Nicky Lambert. Obviously, I'm a mental health nurse and I teach nurses. So I'm going to go around the screen as I can see it. So the first person I can see is Trivolee. We'll say hello and who you are.
Hi everyone, my name is Trivolee Gabriel and I am a mental health nursing, third year nursing student. I'm about to qualify and that's me.
Okay, Laura.
Hi everybody, I'm Laura. I'm a third year mental health nursing student as well and I'm based in Stirling University and I'm my last placement.
Jade.
Hi everyone, my name's Jade. I am a first year mental health student nurse based in North London.
And last but not least, obviously Sean.
How's it going everyone? I'm Sean Prendergast. I'm a student going into fourth year due to start in September and I'm based up in Abertay in Dundee.
So we've got some real interesting times coming through for students. Students are obviously facing completely unprecedented experience. Now, nobody else has had this student nursing experience that these guys have had over the last year. So I guess first thing would be nice to do would be just to check in the same order that we went round and just find out how things are. What's it like being a student nurse at the moment? You want to start off, Trivolee?
Okay, where do I start? Well, first of all, entering third year, my journey so far has been amazing. Well, obviously with its ups and downs, so I can't really fault it. And then entering into third year, I was enthusiastic. I was like, wow, I finally got here. Yay, I'll be qualified in less than a year. Then time came for the final placement and we started to hear the noise in the background about COVID. And I recall going into placement the first week and students were pulled back. And students were pulled back, not students from Middlesex, but other nursing students we were told other nursing students from other universities were pulled back, but we were still left on placement. And so things kind of became a bit confusing and anxious. Well, I became worried, anxious, and then I felt as there was a bit of disconnect at the time during the first week of placement. That would have been in March. And slowly trying to get used to the new normal, really.
Yeah. First mention of the new normal. One to tick off. Yeah. Laura?
It's been a bit of a whirlwind for me. Like Sean, I was meant to be doing my honours and obviously when all this came about, totally swept up with like wanting to serve your country and you know, just getting swept up in the whole atmosphere of it all. Dropped my honours and went into placement, so I'll qualify this year instead of next, which is quite a big step for me as well. But I'm one of the few students at the moment that are in a community service, quite a specialised community service, so that in itself has been a bit of a challenge in terms of, you know, client contact, how we're running things now that everything's online, how that's managed, how then I have a relationship with my mentor as well. The offices are quite small, so having that contact where you would normally be with your mentor quite a bit is all online now as well. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind in itself and a challenge, but it's been a good experience. There's a lot of support out there, especially where I am just now. So as much as it's been quite challenging, it's been really supportive as well. So
okay, so mixed bag for you too, I guess.
Yeah.
How about you, Jade?
I think for first years, it's been a really complex bag of emotions because there is a real feeling of disconnect from being a student nurse. For first year's, placements were dropped. So right now I should be on my 10-week last placement of the year, and that was dropped. And whilst the university has been so amazing in trying to keep us engaged, I think when you don't have that practice placement, it is really hard to feel like a student nurse still. But then on the other hand, I know many people on the course have actually felt that the pandemic has given them a lot of relief. And actually they felt quite overwhelmed with balancing everything, and having the placement cancelled has actually been a bit of a relief for them, and it's given them time to breathe and manage other things going on in their lives. So it's definitely been a mixed bag. And then for our cohort, we very sadly lost one of our students. Addie Raymond passed away, and that's just been a really hard sort of time, and being so far away from each other, you know, it's hard to connect, but I have felt the support from my cohort, which has been really nice.
I think you can't underestimate, you know, what people have gone through. And every now and again you see sort of comments sort of pop up in sort of like the news and things, sort of saying, well, I don't know anybody who's been harmed by this, why are we all waiting? And I think for people that work in health services, we've seen a completely different side to this experience than a lot of people have. But, you know, thankfully we want to keep the numbers of people who experience that down as low as possible, but it is a frightening experience, you know, when you're on a training course, and it's a training course where you could lose your life. That's it's not anything anyone really expected, I think.
No,
so thank you for bringing that up. It's important to remember him. Absolutely. Sean, what did your experience like? So
with my student journey, I was supposed to have my sign off in the summer, and then I moved home due to a family bereavement, and then I returned to Scotland in September. And I had time to make up down my 3 years. So I moved back from September to December. And then I moved back to Ireland temporarily until August. So I've been working agency in children's hospitals in Dublin. So I'm not actually in the UK at the moment. I'm returning in August, which obviously COVID will still be, well, yeah, most likely will still be going around. But obviously the Republic of Ireland have dealt with things a little differently to the UK. And we're now
that was very tactfully put, Sean.
So my like currently I'm not actually on placement. I finished my hours. I've just got my registration in February. I've submitted my application. I'm waiting on an offer, which hopefully will come in the next couple of weeks, and then I'm hoping to return in August to start working as a staff nurse.
So that's really interesting. There are people on placement, people off placement, people working agency, some people working HCA at the minute. And it's been a really odd experience because you're all obviously so experienced in terms of your caregiving. Some of you are drafted in, some of you are told to wait. Some of you have had that experience where you've been asked to help and you've stepped up, and now maybe you're being told not so much helping. Because there's been some news very recently, hasn't there, about student placements potentially ending. I wondered if any of you guys had any thoughts on that, and then we'll go to Vanessa.
Yeah, there was a bit of chat, although it's NHS England at the moment and it hasn't come up to Scotland, but as things always do, start there and come up. So there was a bit of chat, certainly in my cohort, my mental health cohort, and a bit of panic. And I mean, even myself, the way things work, and obviously you want to give your all to placement anyway, but I gave up a contract to come out and do my placement, and obviously it is a paid placement, but that contract's taken me through the last 3 years of my studying, and it's the only way that I've been able to get through it. So if that then ends on the 31st of July, then the position we're in, people that have got kids or commitments, it's quite scary, and it is a case of, and like I was saying, at the start, we had this, we want you to sign up, and you did, you had this, that's who we are as mental health nurses, we wanted to join up and we wanted to help where we can. So you do all that and you move things around and you leave jobs and you juggle kids that aren't necessarily at school, and you juggle the home learning as well to get to a point to be told, well, actually, we don't really need you that much. So from that point, you won't be registered yet, you won't have your PIN in, so you can't really transition onto a band 5. So what do you do at that point? And I think there probably is a bit, especially down in England at the moment, there's a bit of a panic. There certainly would be if it was confirmed up here as well, myself included.
Can I ask you, Trivolee, you were talking a little bit about this.
So similar, there's been this chatter about everything ending July 31st. But most people, for my cohort, quite a number who decided to take on the extended placement, their contract said up to the 30th of August, I believe. So while there is a chatter in the background, they feel confident that they would be able to carry on because they have not heard directly from the trust itself. So they're like, well, that's what NHS England is saying, but this is what our contract is saying. So there's that bit of disconnect at the moment. And hopefully things will get clearer, because I think we just heard about this earlier in the week. So hopefully things will become clearer as the weeks progress, and then we'll definitely know who is doing what and when it's coming to an end. But while we do know it was going to come to an end, I don't think it's fair, doing it so quickly. I mean, people have made plans and people have put things on hold to support the NHS until that time. So it leaves a bit of a sour taste in one's mouth, so to speak.
I think that is a very professional way of putting it. There's something, isn't there, about, if you are treated transactionally at this stage of your career, I'm not surprised if that shapes the way that some students will go on to treat working for the NHS in the future. I think there are ways and means, aren't there, of starting and ending sort of jobs, and ways and means of beginnings and endings are something that mental health nurses should be better at. We know how it is if you terminate something badly. Can I come to Vanessa and see if she has anything that she'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just really, we were talking in last week's episode about the invisibility of nursing and how it's become a lot more visible since COVID. And I think that's the same for students as well. I think that there's been a lot of appreciation about students and the way that they've stepped up in terms of helping the nation and supporting the sort of COVID crisis. And, it's been great to hear all the clapping and support. But I think it is really unfair what you're going through at the moment in terms of the placements. And I think it's really important that we are all vocal in our support of you, and that, people do speak out about it. Certainly on social media tonight, what's come through is the support for you all. So we've got lots of comments. I think some of them are probably friends and family as well. But there's been lots of comments on Facebook, just kind of appreciating you all really and sending support. So I think we need to put that across really, because you have all really stepped up, not just yourselves, but all the student nurses out there, haven't you, in terms of working in these difficult times, whether you're a first year or coming towards the end of your placement. And I think what Nicky was saying about the trauma, normally we're able to reassure people that there could be difficult incidents and this is how you manage them, but we're not able to reassure people, are we, because we're working with an unknown, and that's where the trauma is, I think.
I wondered as well, just thinking about sort of day to day, how you guys have been managing. Jade, how about you? How have you been getting on?
Do you know what? I've really appreciated the support that I've had from the team at Middlesex. We've been having weekly Zoom calls with all of our fellow student voice leaders, which has been really nice to engage. And I think Middlesex has a really nice, Trivolee, I don't know if you agree, just a really nice family vibe about it. The lecturers very much feel like mates in a way, and it's quite nice. And so that's been really lovely to help us sort of navigate everything. I just wanted to add on to what we were just talking about a second ago about sort of support for student nurses and support for the NHS in general. I think over the past, however long it's been, we've had every Thursday the claps for the NHS and things like that. And I think now is a really important time for all of those people who are clapping to also really actively, read into what is happening to our student nurses, what is happening to our nurses, and maybe spending the time where they used to clap on a Thursday evening, maybe looking into writing to their MP, or, just researching into what it's like. Because I think that I don't want that to sort of be forgotten about now that the claps have sort of stopped. And I think what's happening to the third year student nurses, it's not nice. So I hope that the country can still keep going behind our NHS workers.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really odd mix of emotions at this sort of time. And as well, this was supposed to be like the year of the nurse and the midnife, and we were supposed to be having these fantastic rah-rah parties. So I guess, how about you, Sean? How have you been sort of managing, because you've obviously had this quite strange disconnect yourself?
As I said, I left in December, so I left just before things really kicked off, and I've been working night shift for the last 5 months, just saving money, having the same routine before coming back in August. And I've been on special obs with particular patients for long periods of time. So I go in on a night shift, and a couple of patients before I had to wear PPE just because they had respiratory issues, not actually COVID, risk of COVID with the person. But Yeah, like with myself, I have the same sort of routine. I'm doing 4 nights a week or whatever, and minimal contact with people in between. But obviously on a day shift, things are a lot more hectic. I'm in pediatrics, so children of all the demographics probably are getting it the least. Like obviously like the care homes and stuff, it's the most risk and they're the most vulnerable, which is terrible. But just to go back on what Jade said there about like the clap for carers and stuff, it is all well and good. Like I'd agree in saying it's all well and good, like showing their support and stuff. But I think like the NHS and student nurses have had to put up with so much. Like even in Ireland across the board, it's nice to see we're getting appreciated. But I think when things settle down and whatever, you don't want society to just go back and forget everything. You want actually real change to happen, like sustainable change going forward. But yeah, like that's just what I want down the back of that.
Yeah. How about you, Laura? What do you think?
I think, how I've been managing is like everybody else, and who's even on furlough or even is at home with kids is really utilising your family and friends. But we've had the quiz night on Saturday nights, and I've got a really great group of friends, and we check in regularly and share our stories and even using social media like the Twitter output as well, and knowing that everybody has got something that they've had to give up or had to change or had to adapt, and we're all kind of in the same boat. But even within placement, there's a lot of kind of wellbeing calls. There's wellbeing Wednesdays. There's like bingo games during the day just to keep us going, because it's tough. It's tough staring at that screen for your full shift, and everything's quite full on and at the moment. So it is just, and it's about checking in with yourself as well, and regularly checking in with yourself and reflecting on that day, because it can be quite tough. And some days you come away and think, oh my God, I can't go back in there tomorrow. But you just have to use what you've got and use your family and friends as support to kind of get you through.
Trivolee?
I think, like I said initially, there was a lot. I personally experienced a lot of anxiety, and then, like Jade said, the student voice meetings weekly was an immense help. So it kind of helped to clarify some things, and they really helped to relieve some of the anxiety I was feeling. I also started to tap into social media, and then knowing that I'm not the only one experiencing these things was a big help as well. Tapping into other people, what other people are going through as well. And then the Trust they started, the CEO, she started to do a weekly podcast on the internet. So then tapping into that and then listening into the accurate information. And then, because, you're in placement and you're hearing all these like Jade had mentioned, one of our classmates one of our fellow students had died. And then we also had 2 trusts in the nurse who passed away, 2 nurses in the trust who passed away as well. So then obviously concerns and anxiety speaking. So listening to the accurate information from the internet, from the CEO, as well as the weekly check-in with Middlesex University, that really helped. And then along came these different meetings that they started having for nurses, weekly meetings for the BAME meetings. That started on a Friday, Nigerian Nursing Association. So just listening to the different presenters and that, and how they were speaking on issues concerning the Black and ethnic minority community, and that was really helpful. And that kind of helped to just, so the more information I got there, the more I was able to just kind of decipher what help is out there, and knowing where to turn to was what helped me to.
Yeah, it seems like you've all sort of like pulled on different resources as well. Yeah. And I think it's really important to note, actually, the experience of us all is so different, isn't it? It's a very different experience seeing what's going on in the news and being from a Black and minority ethnic background and knowing that your odds of contracting or doing less well if you do contract are very different. That's really important to notice, because there's so much that we share in terms of like our nursing community. But I think it's really important to see that there are some differences, and we need to be very, very supportive and very clear about our values base when we're supporting each other and speaking up on behalf of each other. And I think it's really key to bring that up. So I'm glad you did that. Has anyone used wobble rooms or anything like any of the kind of like support mechanisms been put into placements in practice?
I've seen a few different health boards like getting their relaxation rooms and stuff off the ground. But obviously, being on a different island, I haven't had the pleasure of like relaxing or taking the time out in any of them. I think it's a good initiative, like any sort, like to follow on from the point of like getting support from everyone else and hearing the good, the bad, the ugly of the different stories people's are going through. Like I do, like I'm sure people take comfort in that, knowing it's not just them. You know, we're all in this together, like kind of rallying through. And like obviously all the positive stories you hear, like that veteran that did raised over 20 million. You know, you see things like that and it's great. You know, it really boosts the morale and stuff. Me personally, I try to avoid the negativity. Twitter's not been the best for that because you get the news ahead of the actual mainstream media. But yeah, like I think there's been lots of positives, like people banding together and, you know, kind of facing this head on, both students and healthcare professionals. So which that's nice to see.
Definitely, I agree. I think as well, one of the privileges of being in nursing and going through a pandemic like this is you're surrounded by some of the best types of people and the most supportive types of people. And I think that in my experience, particularly my smaller group of friends that I have at uni, we've really pulled on each other and really supported each other through that, which has been a really nice thing to have.
I was really surprised that you guys said that you found social media supportive, because I had to cut back. I was like, I'm too scared to look at this phone today.
I think in terms of the social media output, you know, for a while there, it was an amazing time to be a nurse because with the clapping for the carers and, you know, everybody was aspiring to be a nurse and we were all amazing people. And it really was quite a nice atmosphere for a while. And people were sharing posts about long days and you're amazing and you're great. And it was, and all the rainbows everywhere, you know, it was. Thank you, NHS. And you did feel, and still do feel quite privileged to be delivering that service and beyond. And some are more frontline than others. But it's a good time. It's a good time to be a nurse because we really are showcasing who we are, what we're about, and what our qualities are, and the fact that, you know, we are giving up quite a lot to be out there and supporting other people and putting other people before our families in some cases as well. So, you know, we are showcasing ourselves as well.
And also that we're highly skilled academic people as well as kind people.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you talk to people about nursing and they say things like, I didn't realise you were a nurse. You seem really smart. You're like, yeah. Thanks. I'm just going to go with thank you for that. I am really smart. But it's very interesting, isn't it? This every time you see nursing in the media, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what you guys do on an everyday basis and what it means to be a nurse. So I think you're right. This is a great opportunity for us to start talking about that. Yeah. Vanessa, do you want to come in there? I couldn't tell if you're waving at me.
Yeah, no, just really to reinforce what we've just been saying, because I think in terms of mental health, we're going to be needed post-COVID, aren't we? I mean, the mental health needs are going to be pretty significant from the COVID crisis. So I think it's important that we stay visible. And I think has already been said, I think it was Laura who was saying about the visibility of support that has kind of waned a little bit now. And that often happens in a crisis, doesn't it? That people support you during the crisis and the crisis ends. And actually that's when you need support. So I think it's recognising that for students, because it can be quite an isolating time. And it's also recognising the role of mental health nurses and mental health nursing students post-COVID, given, the trauma, bereavement, and mental health difficulties. And I'm hoping, and Nicky will know more about this than me, that the curriculum will reflect that, because there are going to be changes, aren't there, in terms of, the presentations that we're seeing, and particularly around trauma, I guess.
I guess we could talk a little bit about nurse education, how you found it in a second, but I guess I was just wondering, how did you all know that you wanted to be mental health nurses or nurses? When did you realise that? So who wants to go first? Because it's always a real interesting question to ask people.
I don't know first.
Well, I'll start with as usual, Sean. So my background's in psychology. That's where I started. I'm obviously a mature student, although you wouldn't obviously know, but I'm a mature student. My background started in psychology. So I already quite like the whole developmental and the influences that children even had at an early stage. And then I went on to manage a service delivering care in the community to over 65s, and I came across a CPN, so a community psychiatric nurse, who was very, 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 very challenging and wasn't delivering such a great service. And I remember thinking to myself, I can do a better job than that. I can do a much better job than that. And we ended up as a team delivering quite a lot of help and support with people in terms of mood, self-managing some of the issues that they had at home. And I felt as if I had a bit of a niche for it. And it just kind of grew from there because I wanted to do it on a bigger scale. And everybody always says to me, why don't you follow the psychology route? There's more money in it. And I went, but I wanted to deliver like what a nurse represents. So the skills, the qualities, the care, and I want to deliver that on a one-to-one basis, or to help people deliver that on a one-to-one basis using these qualities that a nurse has and that I think we all have. And it's just about developing them. So that was my journey, is meeting into somebody that didn't do a particularly good job, and I thought I could do it better as usual, but yeah.
Well, that's interesting. What about you other guys? How did you come to be mental health nurses?
So with myself, I did 6 years of business out of school, including a 4-year degree, and just was working in the office 9 to 5 in front of a computer screen, treated like a number, didn't enjoy it. My mum is a children's nurse. She's been doing it over 35 years. And a close family member lived with a long-term mental illness. So that was first-hand experience of like looking at supporting someone with a long-term mental condition. And then like nursing as a career is definitely in the blood through my mum. So I moved to Scotland to get the proper college experience, and haven't looked back since. Obviously 3.5, almost 4 years later, absolutely loving it. Like, so as a student, I wouldn't have excelled too much. Sport would have been my focus growing up, but now I've kind of found a career I'm passionate about, so I'm kind of throwing myself out there and like excited by it, you know. So
I think my story kind of resonates with you, Sean. I finished my A-levels about 6 years ago, and my family and friends would always make jokes about the amount of jobs that I've had. I've had about 45 million jobs, and I just never felt really quite happy or quite right. And then I started working for a charity called MenCap, supporting people in the community with learning disabilities. And then I worked in my local A&E for a while, and it was actually working in A&E that made me realise that I wanted to do mental health nursing. We worked quite closely alongside the RAID team there, and I just saw that there was a real lack of, service, I guess, supporting people with mental health, long-term mental health problems. In an A&E unit that we had, there was maybe about 18, 19 beds and one room bed for a mental health patient. And I just got talking to the team and everything sort of just fell into place. And since I started my journey as a student mental health nurse, there's not really been a day where I've felt like how I used to in my old jobs. Everything just feels right all of the time.
Yeah,
and similar to Jade, so prior to starting my nurse training, I was working with local charity MenCap in Penda, Barnet MenCap. And while I enjoyed that, I wanted something more. And I found I enjoyed talking to people. I loved hearing people's lived experience. I could sit down all day and ask, well, what happened here? And what were you thinking? And what are your thoughts? And I really enjoyed that. And alongside working with Barnet MenCap, I was also working in a pharmacy. So I was doing pharmacy assistant as well. And I found I spent more time talking to what they're experiencing and what they're going through as regards to maybe just regular transaction. You'd say, here's your medication, there you go. I spent a lot of time talking to the client, to the customers. And more I was picking up little things here and there. So it wasn't necessarily about their physical health. They were quite happy to talk. And I realized that there was something in there regarding maybe they might be this, they're going through whatever, diabetes, hypertension, but there's what I'm seeing now as an underlying depression, so to speak, that might not have been picked up. So it just snowballed from there, really. And I got talking to a few of my neighbors and their mental health nurses who knew. So in talking, and so this is what I experienced today. This is what I spoke to this person about. And at the time, I was also looking for change. And they suggested, why don't you love talking to people, why don't you get into mental health nursing, give it a go, see if you like it. And something, I've never looked back. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time at Middlesex. I'm really looking forward to getting into the next journey as a registered nurse. I'm looking forward to it. But with all of this that has happened, I think it has prepared me more, if I'm honest, with the whole experience during COVID. I think it has prepared me even more so for the role I'm about to take on.
Good. Just before, Vanessa, we come to you for questions, why did you become a mental health nurse?
Who, me?
Yeah. You, Vanessa. I'm so shocked.
I had my head immersed in Twitter then, reading the comments. So yes, I think for me it was serendipity, really, as lots of things in my life are. I hadn't considered mental health nursing, but I was always really interested in people's stories and really curious about people's lives, and always had an instinct about helping the underdog, really, and really passionate about social justice. And I've got no nurses in my family at all, and I was planning to go down more of an arts route with my career. And I was at sixth form college, and I just literally overheard somebody talking about applying for nursing, and they mentioned mental health nursing, and I turned around in my chair and I said, "What's mental health nursing?" And they told me, and I just had this huge instinct that was the job for me. And I went home that night and I said to my mum, "I'm going to be a mental health nurse." And she was quite surprised because, like I say, there were no nurses and I'd never shown an interest. And I think she probably thought of nursing as adult nursing. And when I told them at college that's what I wanted to do, I mean, this is back in, the early 90s, they tried to persuade me against it, said that I was making a mistake, that I should do something more academic, which feeds into Nicky's comment. And of course, I said, no, that was what I was going to do. And I went off and I did Project 2000 at the time. And I've never regretted it. I think it's a brilliant career and there are so many opportunities. And I would never change the decision that I made, even though it was a really quick decision, because it was the right decision. So yes, that's my story.
Well, what are they saying in Twitter then that's so absorbing? Tell us some questions from there.
Yeah, I was just reading because Jane Beach has put a comment in, and she was involved in some of the discussions with the NMC today, and she's a lead for regulation, isn't she, in Unite? So what I was reading was this comment here. In a meeting today, the CNOs confirmed that Scotland and Wales third-year student payments will continue until they join the register. In England, those who will still have hours to do will continue to be paid. Those who have completed will be facilitated to join the full register. And then it just says we are in discussions to ensure that there is no gap for people. So that's quite reassuring, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Thoughts on
that?
Laura's stuck in the corner there.
silently.
Yeah.
I guess the thing is as well, one of the problems is not just the uncertainty, I think that the lack of parity. So even across London, all the trusts are doing different things, regardless of the fact that we've got like central organisations. And that I think is going to be difficult. And even when people are making the same decision, the way it's being communicated is very different. So some people are just getting a get your stuff and go. And some people are like, thank you so much for all the hard work you've done. They're getting a letter, they're getting support. Do you know what I mean? It makes a difference, I think. So that's been an issue, I think.
And it is frustrating, that difference sometimes between England and Wales, for example, around things like student bursaries. Because I remember covering an event from social media point of view in Wales and kind of talking to some of the lecturers there about the differences, and I totally not being aware of them as nurse practicing in England. But I think we need to kind of bridge those gaps. They need to be we need to be similar. So if we've got nursing bursaries happening in Wales, it should be happening in England and so on, because we should be questioning why is there a difference. If they can do it here, why can't they do it there, and things.
We are going to have some time when we speak to we have a Scottish session and a Welsh session coming up, because I think it's really important. I think a lot of nurses don't realise how different things are in each of the different countries, and I think it's important for us just to bear that in mind.
Yeah, totally agree.
I've got a question here from Ben Hannigan, from the Welsh contingent. saying a question for tonight's excellent MTHTV panel. That's you guys. Now that you've experienced working and studying in a pandemic, what suggestions would you make to unis and to the NHS to reform or to inform their responses to future issues like this? So if we're going to have any more pandemics or emergencies, what could the NHS or what could universities do differently for you guys?
That's a tricky one, Nikki. Because like I said, initially everybody was silent. Nobody knew what was going on. So the communication was slow to come through. And then obviously once we kind of got into week 3 and 4 of the whole lockdown thing, things became easier with just regular updates and meetings. And like I said, Trust then started to put up regular information and things became more clear. And then for me and the rest of my crew, we started to see a way forward. What can make it easier? This is unprecedented, isn't it? So let me have a think and get back to you on that one.
Well, I was just going to add that I think that the NHS and universities, well, particularly my university, will go above and beyond the students as best they can. And actually, maybe it's a question of what can the government do for student nurses rather than the NHS and universities, because actually it really lies with them. And the NHS and universities are kind of, how they support people is very dependent on what the government tells them. And that's supporting student nurses, supporting all healthcare workers, paying them correctly, and making it a little bit easier to be a student nurse. I think it's like a wider issue.
I'd like to think, given this like kind of once in a lifetime out of the blue pandemic, I'd like to think if it ever happened again, touch wood, we'd be better prepared, firstly. Secondly, one thing I meant to mention earlier when Jade said the support Middlesex University offered, in Abertay, even though I'm not like currently in Scotland and I've finished my hours, like there's many emails being sent out to all students that are on placement. There's like weekly check-ins, and it's just a kind of a group email address to every student in third year and second year and whatever. So I think, like keeping in touch with students and making sure you're approachable. Like Abertay is a small university and they're very approachable. You'd know the lecturers more on a personal basis. You'd be like comfortable to approach them if you had any issues and stuff, and just keeping that line of communication open so that students feel properly supported if, God forbid, they actually are going through another pandemic. But I think it came out of nowhere and all the countries weren't prepared really. So I think, as I said, if it was to happen again, they'd have a bit more of a clue on how to handle it, like be it track and trace testing from the offset, kind of locking down early and stuff like that. But let's say that there's not going to be another one.
I think they need to be collating the information now and building, because what my issues with being out in placement might not be the same as a first year or second year. So if they're collating all those reflective pieces and incorporating it into, some sort of plan, and it wouldn't need to be a pandemic to understand what students need and students want. And a big part of the problem was the communication. We were finding out on Twitter something happened and waiting 2 or 3 days because then they were having a meeting at uni or there was a meeting in government. We were having mass panic for 2 days and glued to tellies to see what's going on. So the whole thing was the communication. At the end of the day, we are adult learners. We are choosing to be at university. Tell us what's going on or tell us we don't actually know what's going on at the moment. We'll keep you in the loop. Even having that and knowing that we're on the same level and not a different level is a big thing, a really, really big thing. And sometimes you felt a wee bit shut in the dark and felt like you're at school again, not through anybody's fault. I think the universities found out at the same time as we did, but even that communication of we're not quite sure what's happening yet, but we understand, or how are you feeling, and having those regular check-ins. But start collating now. We should have been collating for the last few weeks about how everybody's feeling, so that we don't need another pandemic to fix it. We need to fix it now. We need to be fixing it next week and working on things to progress. Because it's not going anytime soon. It's definitely not.
Laura, do I agree with you? The communication was patchy, because I recall the weekend we were sent a survey. We went into lockdown. We were still on, that would have been week 2 on placement, and we were sent a survey, and there was no communication from the uni. There was nothing. And there was this pressure to decide one way or the other, and we had until I think it was the Monday. So we were sent this every Friday, and basically we're told you need to decide whether you're going to opt in or opt out on the Monday. And if you opted out, then there might be a possibility you wouldn't be able to finish your hours for placement, which would then affect registration. So it was almost like this emotional blackmail, so to speak. It felt that way. So the lack of communication and the pressure was there. So communication is definitely I think first and foremost. But if they don't know, like you said, then they don't know. Then say we don't have the answer, and let that be out there.
There's almost an element where they want to protect us, and I know that, and I know that they want to protect the students. They don't want to let us know absolutely everything because it might make us more anxious. But it's nice to have that choice. It is nice to have that choice, and that would probably be a big piece of advice for me. But yeah, it's fixing things and going forward now, not thinking about the pandemic for sure.
Yeah,
it was such a strange time. I looking back on it now, I can't believe how fast it happened. You know, from it happening out of nowhere, then us being online teaching straight away, and then because I'm obviously based in London, all the health organisations, all the different trusts, all the different universities suddenly working together to pull all the placements so that people weren't travelling, people were just going to their nearest hospital. It was really a really amazing response on one level, but it did come with a lot of stress for a few days, and I think you always assume, don't you, that if you're paying for a course, you're paying for an experience, and then the experience that you've got is not the experience that you guys have had.
Right.
And that's really difficult. And it's like, I'd like my money back.
Well, exactly. I think people forget we are paying for this. You know, we're not just doing it.
In England, we are.
Paid for it. We are paying to do this.
It's very unusual. Can I come to Vanessa and see if she has any more social media for us?
Yeah, there's been quite a few actually. So some of them are more statements that I think reflect what we've been discussing. So somebody's put, from a mental health nursing perspective, our COVID pandemic is yet to hit, which I think reflects what we were saying earlier around mental health needs. And I think that's really important. I like the way that that's been phrased to acknowledge that. And then we've got one here, which is a question about education. And that is, to all the students, many students have said there is a disconnect between theory and practice. How do you think going to university has helped you prepare? Any thoughts from our students?
I personally don't feel as if there's a disconnect between theory and practice. It may be a bit different. I've really enjoyed my experience, and I've been able to relate and reflect on each experience within practice. From the theory, every essay at the time you've thought was the worst essay ever, but reflecting on it has absolutely developed you and helped you become a better nurse in practice. So I wouldn't say that it was disconnected, but that could be my experience in comparison to everybody else's. At the time you don't realise it, but certainly when you have to use it, you know it because you've learned it and because you've spent weeks writing an essay about it. So yeah, I think it has been quite connected. I think the new programme that's certainly in place in Stirling looks even more amazing. If anything else, I wish I could learn on that. You know, that new programme development rather than what we had. But that would be the only thing, which isn't a bad thing. So
I agree with you on that, Laura. The new programme does look amazing. It looks more detailed and in depth. And I wish I'm like, man, I just missed it. But I wish I could have captured some of that as well. But I don't think there was a disconnect. I think everything has come together to move me forward.
Definitely. I'm part of the new programme, and I don't know how different it was to before, but we did a long block of theory before we went on placement, and I actually thought, for me, not that I have anything to compare it to, but that worked for me. And I found that all of the, like you're saying, the theory and the placement and the practice goes hand in hand, and to have that 3-4 months of theory foundation really set me up for going into practice.
I think the breakdown in Dundee, there's 2 universities in Dundee as a city in Scotland. So the first, second, third, they both do mental health nursing, and I think the timetable for each course is different because there's obviously limited places between NHS Tayside and NHS Fife, which is where all the hospitals are based. But with myself, I was fortunate on my placements throughout my journey that I got a good mix between general and different demographics in psych services. And like I found I functioned better on the practical, like placement side of things, as opposed to say assignments and presentations, which I was happy enough with my results with. It was just like I enjoyed the more hands-on practical experience. And I found like the first couple of weeks you're kind of settling in. If it's a 4-week placement and you're in first year and you don't have much responsibility, or you haven't done that much training, so you don't get as much learning experiences, like 4 weeks is almost too little. By the time you're a bit settled and comfortable, you're gone. But for things like your sign off, I think the first couple of weeks you're kind of settling in, then you become more confident and you have that long period of time where you can really come into your own. And but then by the end of it, you're pretty much good to go. And then, like me, you move back to Ireland. So yeah, I think there wasn't much of a disconnect with myself. Me personally, I found I'd settle in. Like I'd link some things, of course, with the kind of classwork content, like the practical skills and stuff, the skills labs. But more, I would just find my own through the placement. Like I wouldn't do a little bit of study beforehand to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. But kind of, I think you just take it as it goes, take it as it comes. It's a great way to operate. It worked for me anyway.
Well, please. We're coming to the end, Lily, so we'll just finish up with our questions. I think Vanessa's got a couple more questions.
Yeah, so we've got a few people just giving feedback. Carmel Clancy, good feedback, excellent panel discussion. Thanks to everyone. Then we've got Alfonso, who's going to be involved in a future session, who says, what advice would you give to prospective students who want to come into mental health nursing?
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
I was asked this question in an interview. It was like, what would you do to promote the career? And for me, it was like, do you enjoy getting to know people? Do you enjoy being kind and looking after people? Then it's a career for you, because it's so broad. You could find your feet in different areas, like be it clinical, in the community, if you're more academic, the research side of things. But just like there's so much opportunities, and it's varied. You're doing good in the world. So it's been a perfect fit for me.
I would just add on to Sean, and you know, Sean and I have been really, really lucky that we've been involved in quite a lot through our journey, quite a bit of big things that have then taken us on, things that have taken us to be on here tonight. So I would say that although mental health's a lot smaller in comparison to adult nursing, there is scope for it to go as far as you want to go. Opportunities to take you there if you've got the drive and the determination and that basic need to want to help people and help others, help other people, then the opportunities are there, and there's a lot of opportunities there to grab. So it's a great...
Did you want to say something briefly about the conferences that have been being organised?
Yeah, so Sean and I done the Futures Mental Health Nursing Conference last year, the year before. Last year, that's how we met. It was the year before we started organising it. That was a massive point in both our journeys. We had over 600 people attend it. It was one of the most successful ones so far. But since that point, we've actually become chairs of the Student Mental Health Nursing Forum in Scotland, and the actual Mental Health Nursing Forum is quite an instrumental and in terms of different agencies and professionals being involved to have a voice for mental health nurses. So we now have started a student version. It's quite new, but our hope is to kind of gather all those voices and people's concerns and things that you wouldn't normally raise, like the payment stopping in the 31st July, like taking that right up to the top if we can and raising it a lot quicker and having a student voice. So that's quite new, but that's just one of the opportunities which has landed us here tonight. So Sean maybe wants to say a bit more about it.
Yeah, basically what Laura said, just if prospective students, I just say, like, if you find your feet, you're eager and motivated, there is plenty of opportunities. Put yourself out there. To Jade, like, she's obviously on tonight as a first year. She has the next 2 years ahead of her. Like, I'm sure she's passionate and eager, so she'll be putting herself forward for things outside the classroom, and who knows where it will end up. But it's all great because it's adding to something bigger than yourself, you know, contributing to something bigger, which is what Laura's saying, like the student voice. It's the kind of collective student, mental health nurse student Scotland voice that we can then bring to the table with the professional body, which is the Mental Health Nurse Forum, which will have a bit of a sway in like Parliament or in like mental welfare commission, like in education and research, whatever it is, but there's definitely opportunities there for people that want them. They just need to put themselves forward for it.
Definitely. I just think that being a nurse is such a privilege. In my opinion, it's a privilege. You see people in their most vulnerable state. And the feeling that you get when you see somebody who's, come from not being very well at all, to being able to just perform like daily tasks and things like that, and knowing that you've been a part of that journey and you've made that impact. I just don't think there's any feeling like it. And I don't know if there's many other jobs like it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. But you, Trivolee?
For me, what I say to anyone coming into nursing, if you like development, because there's so much development and progress in nursing, I think developing personally and is such a varied role. So, and there's skills as well. You widen your skills, and if you have the qualities for it, then it's for you. Because I feel, like I said, I've never looked back. Be perfectly comfortable. I feel I've journeyed and progressed, and I'm pleased with my progress so far. And for me, this is just the beginning. I'm looking forward to what else can I do with this role and where it's going to take me. And now that I'm at the end of my, well, it's not the end because you never finish reading, do you? You always gotta keep yourself updated. The minute you decide you're going to close the books, and then that's it, you're going to be left behind. So I think for now, having finished with uni at the moment, I'm now mapping a learning journey for myself. Yeah. Where do I want this to take me, and moving forward, really.
That's really positive. Thank you, Vanessa. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think a comment from me, and also this comment here from Grant Fraser King, because it seems like a good one to end on as well, which is, it's vital you remember why you wanted to become a mental health nurse. Please record it somewhere. I think that's really important, isn't it? Especially given the current situation that you're all becoming mental health nurses in. And I think just for me, just to say that, I've been really heartened to listen to you all, the inspiration and the values that you all carry. And it's reassuring, because you're going to be the next generation of mental health nurses, to know that you hold those values and beliefs and passion and energy for mental health nursing. So, yeah, thank you. It's been really great discussion.
Yeah. I think what I really like is that you guys have such a sense of your own worth. Do you know what I mean? Like speaking up, speaking out. You guys are gold dust. There are not enough nurses. And the idea, the fact that you were able to say, it's not okay to treat us like this, or we have something to offer, that is really positive. It's really heartening. It's absolutely the future of nursing. Speaking up, speaking out, knowing your stuff, wanting to change, wanting to grow, wanting to learn, all that stuff is absolutely brilliant. You're looking after me one day, so I'm delighted to see the quality. I think on that note, perhaps we should bid everyone a good night. And so if you guys just stay there, we'll say good night to everybody. Dave will be finishing up. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.